This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you by Faulkner University. Choosing where to go to college is a big decision, and Faulkner University is the right choice for many reasons. First and foremost, they're committed to biblical teaching. Each of their 85 outstanding academic programs infuse Christian principles into the curriculum and prepare students for professional success in their career and meaningful service in their community. Their main campus in Montgomery, Alabama offers an abundance of opportunities for internships, networking, and entertainment. Over 96% of their students receive financial aid, making Faulkner education a great value. Faulkner is a Christian university dedicated to helping you grow strong in your faith, and their family-like atmosphere will make you feel right at home. Check out faulkner.edu today.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis. We are glad once again that you are with us. Glad that we are able to be here together. Have Will back on the show with us after he was out, I think, a couple of times. Will, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I was trying to think. It's probably been 3 or 4 episodes since I've been back. So glad to be back, especially with the guest we have today. I know it's going to be some good stuff.
Oh, yeah. So, Travis, had a pretty good week this week?
Oh, it's been great. Been great. Editing podcasts. We batch recorded. I'm fired up. Got a couple in the hopper, if I can say that, leading into the new year. And so ready to get going in January 2022, this first episode.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. By the time this is rolling, it will be the new year, which is crazy how fast 2021 moved through. I think we talked about that last time. The older we get, the faster time moves. So it's crazy. But today we are extremely excited to have our guest on with us. This is my good friend, Will's good friend, Jackie Baker. Jackie, how are you today?
I'm great. How are y'all? Sounds like y'all have had an exciting week.
Oh, yeah. We have. Well, Jackie, you and I have been associated with one another for, I don't even know, 6 or 7 years now. Is that right?
Yes. Actually,
Something
I think
that.
7 years.
Yeah. So we've been doing a little group. I do a little group for them. Jackie works for Community Action. And so I'll let her tell a little bit more about what Community Action is. But she does a group and brings this group to me about once a quarter. We've started kind of a new program this year too, but anyway, Jackie, tell us a little bit about Community Action. There may be some people listening that go, I don't know what that is.
Okay, so Community Action was started many years ago, a little more than 50, for the war on poverty. So we have community actions all across the United States with 19 now in the state of Alabama that serves community members. And our mission is to address the adverse causes of poverty. And we like to help others help themselves to reach self-sufficiency. The agency offers a variety of programs, and because we are aiming to address the low-income segment of our population, our programs are designed for those individuals and families. We have LIHEAP, which is utility assistance. We have housing assistance, which can help, families and individuals that are struggling or maybe facing eviction or behind on their rent. We can assist them in those areas. We also have the much loved Meals on Wheels for our elderly and disabled in our communities. So they get a hot meal every day and meals on the weekends. And we also have a mother's parenting program. We have a co-parenting program, and then we have the Forward program. And these programs are funded. All of our programs, are funded either by federal, state, or local, and through donations. But the particular program that I work with, the Forward program, we are funded by the Alabama Department of Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention and by the State Department of Human Resources. So
that's awesome. And so your official title with them is what?
I'm the coordinator for the Forward program.
Okay. So, man, there's a lot of things covered.
A lot unpacked there. Yeah, a lot of good things, a lot of great things.
I mean, you cover almost every segment of society in some way, it sounds like.
Yes, we do our best. there's a lot, there's a lot of suffering. The pandemic really turned the world upside down on its head. And there's no area that was not unscathed by that virus. And so when you already had vulnerable people in our population, and then to add to that, we're serving, we have found ourselves serving individuals that have never in their life needed service, and so it's really touching to see families, getting help that up until now really had never been in that position before. So we're proud of what we do. We're proud of our agency. We love our community, and we don't like to see anyone suffering. And so, to the best of our abilities, we try to meet at least the basic needs of those, that especially when you're dealing with the elderly or children. So we do what we can, and we have we have offices in Franklin County, Colbert County, and Lauderdale County. So we serve all three counties. We have a great staff. Our staff at Community Action, I just can't say enough about them. They are the most giving, compassionate, helpful people that you probably could ever come across.
So, I mean, they may not hear this. You don't have to you don't have to compliment them that way.
If anybody could, if you guys want to tag,
out there.
Yeah, if you just want to tag our executive director, David Crosby.
There you go.
I'll be sure to ask him, hey, did you see the podcast?
Well, I think it's really interesting, all the levels, and all of us have been impacted by that, either receiving service or we've served as a foster parent, any kind of community action that helps them. And we've benefited from that back in Fayetteville. I've also helped with the Meals on Wheels when I lived in Albertville, Alabama, there at the church. But we have a saying, or Ben has a saying, anything you've been through has equipped you to help somebody else. So we did want to spend a little time on your story.
I'm real equipped.
And maybe how you came to be, so acquainted with the product, but then also how you've been able to turn that around and serve others. We think that's a great redemption story we see throughout Scripture and throughout the history of the universe. Is this idea of, man, somebody helped me, and now I'm going to turn around and help others.
Yes.
So if you want to unpack that a little bit for us, maybe your story, as much as you're willing to share, that'd be great.
Well, I didn't start off being an employee of Community Action. I started my relationship with them as a client back in 2007. And so to go back and kind of fill in some gaps about how I got to where I was in 2007. I was born and raised in Florence. I had a wonderful family, went to Bradshaw High School, had I just couldn't have asked for a better childhood. A Christian foundation was laid in my youth when I was 8 years old. And I'm not going to tell y'all when that was, but it was a really long time ago. So I was very blessed to have that foundation growing up, and, was a certified respiratory therapist after I graduated high school, and got married, had children. My first contact with Community Action Agency was not as an employee, it was as a client. And that dates back to 2007. And so when I met the ladies of the Mother's Parenting Program in 2007 at Community Action, I was in the Colbert County Jail, and I was waiting on my ticket to Tutwiler Prison.
Wow.
And so at the age of 33, after, being a mom and a wife, a respiratory therapist, I found myself, unfortunately, so many people these days, I found myself addicted to opioids. And that addiction took me on a path that led me to abandon my family, abandon my children. The addiction led to other drug abuse. And before 2003, I was addicted to crack cocaine, and I was living on the streets. And coming from the upbringing that I did, to have this addiction, I think for someone who does have a spiritual in a Christian foundation, when you know you're doing wrong, you know that you're sinning, and you know that you're doing things and you're experiencing things that does not sit well with your soul. It almost like the drug keeps you out there even longer, because you self-hate, because you know that you're in a bad place and you're doing bad things, and you know the Lord, so you need to get out of it. But the addiction is so powerful. The addiction pulled me away from my own children. I was willing to give them up for the drugs, and that's exactly what I did. And so during the 6 years that I lived on the streets as a crack addict, I had committed several offenses that landed me in jail and had me convicted of 3 felonies. And the last day that I got arrested was the last day I used drugs, and that was April 11th, 2007. And I cried that day. And when I say I cried, I mean I cried, and it was a release. It was just a release of all the pain and anguish that I have felt, and it was like I just felt a warmth over me that it's finished. Like it was just, I just knew to my very core that I was done. And from that moment on, I did not. I was ready to serve my sentence, and I was ready to return back to the foundation that was laid in my childhood. And so often, I get asked, "How were you able to, stay drug free? How were you able to change your life?" And you see so many others that struggle. Or that don't make it back. And all I can say is that it was and I keep going back to this, but it was the Christian foundation that was laid in my childhood. And so the parents that I work with today that I'm helping through similar circumstances, I tell them that it's not too late. Lay that foundation for your children. And then if your children, take a wrong turn, they'll always have that to come back to. My own 2 children are good examples of that.
Well, that reminds me of the passage in Proverbs: train up a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not depart from it. It's a principle. It's not a promise. I'm never going to do anything wrong again, because my parents raised me the right way, but they always have that foundation.
It's rattling around up there.
Yes, it's there,
It's there.
and you mentioned that the drugs sort of kept you in that place of shame and guilt. And that's one of the things I've learned about addiction is that's what's so strong about addiction, is that it feeds that shame and that guilt. And whereas, when you got hurt as a kid, where did you run? You run to your parents.
You ran to your parents.
But it's like as adults, when we do things that hurt us or we get hurt, the shame and the guilt, we run away from the Father.
Right.
And it's like we do the opposite of what we're supposed to do.
Exactly.
And we don't teach our kids to run away from us when they mess up. We want them to come to us. And at some point, sometime in our life, we get that shift to where we run away from the Father. So.
Right. And, you can say, or I said, I accepted Christ into my life at 8 years old. But, I can say that at 41-year-old, when I was 41, I realized that he accepted me. So I rededicated my life to him on April 3rd of 2011. So
April 3rd, it's a good day.
It's
his birthday.
Oh, well, there you
Not
go.
2011, but several years before that. Once again, we won't get into how long ago that
I was going to say, you've done well with your beard.
Yeah, exactly.
Be about 10 years old.
I'm always blown away by the redemption story. And, when we got into fostering, that was the first thing they said was, this is the goal in mind, is to get them back to their parents. If you're in this to adopt, that may happen. And it did for us. But the goal is you're not only mentoring these kids, but you're really mentoring their parents. You're trying to help that relationship build back. And man, it's just awesome to hear your story, to see that. And that's what we need to be putting out there as a church, as Christians, is that there is redemption. As long as there's that air in your lungs and you're living life, there's an opportunity. The mercies are new every morning.
So how did you then, from the time that you kind of discovered, or, you said you were arrested that day, how did that full kind of change come about? I know that's probably a long story, but the day you were arrested, then kind of what happened after that?
Well, like I said, I just felt a release, and I was at peace. I was at peace in my heart, and I was at peace about, going to prison. And I did not know what what was in my future, but I knew that whatever was in my future, it would not be what was in my past. And so, with that, anything that was laid before me, any door that opened, I was going to walk through it. And I don't know how to explain the peace that I had with my life at that point. It was like, I know that whatever path I get on is going to be the path that the Lord wants me on. Because really, Jackie has to stay out of it. Because if I put my hands in something, I'm going to mess it up. So I just pray for, his will be done. And so I know that if I'm really struggling with something and I keep hitting barriers and barriers and barriers, then I know I need to go another direction. But my family had, rightfully so. I came from a great family. Now my mom had passed away when I was 25, so she was not alive to witness any of this that I went through, and I'm proud for that. But my sister, my dad, my family, they had cut ties with me early on in my addiction after trying so many times to help me. And I think that was a blessing too. So if anyone out there, if you're a family member and you're struggling with a child or a sibling, or a family member in addiction, love them through it, pray them through it, but do not enable them through it. Because my family made it very easy for me for some time to stay high and to stay in that lifestyle, because I would lie and I would con. I would play on their guilt. I would do everything I could to manipulate the situation just so that I could continue with my addiction. And I really hurt them a lot. And then finally they were like, you know what, we're done. And so when they were done, that enabled me, and I hate to use that old, well, they hit rock bottom. Well, rock bottom can be a lot of different bottoms for a lot of different folks. And there's sometimes it's not just one rock bottom. You may hit 3 or 4 before you get tired of bumping your head on the wall. But when my family did stop enabling my addiction, and I kind of had to go through the prison time and all of that pretty much on my own. I had to come back for court on my additional charges after I had been sent to Tutwiler. The Cobbett County came back and brought me back to jail for some other charges I had not faced yet. And so while I was there, these ladies came in doing a parenting class, and I was actually crying that day. And they said, "Why are you crying? Is prison that bad?" And I said, "No. I mean, compared to the life I was living, prison was exactly where I needed to be." And so it wasn't that I was having to go back and finish my sentence. It was because I was fearful that when the day came that they would give me my walking papers, I did not know where I was going to go or what I was going to do, because I did not have, clothes. I didn't have an ID. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a place to go. I had nothing. But I'm going to tell you what I did have was faith in my Lord. So those ladies, before they left that day, they said, "Don't you worry about that. We're going to help you." And sure enough, when I finished my sentence and came back to the area, I walked straight into a halfway house, a local halfway house that Community Action had set up for me. And I stayed at that halfway house for 3 years while I was doing college courses. So
you finished those college courses, and part of those were kind of in this area. So then that's how you ended up with Community Action eventually?
Yes, Community Action had helped me so much. The parenting classes, the finding me the halfway house. While I was at the halfway house, I went to Community Action to thank my caseworker, Holly Morrison. And so she was sitting there talking with me, and she said, "Well, what are you going to do now?" And I said, "I don't know. I was 40 years old. I had 3 felonies on me. I didn't have transportation, or I was living in a halfway house. I said, I really don't know what I'm going to do with my life. And she said, well, I do. You're going back to college. And of course, I told her she was crazy. She said, no, you're going back to college. I said, no, you're crazy. So we had this you're crazy conversation for about 5 minutes. And she spun around in her chair and she went to typing. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, no, Lord, this is not your plan. It's not. It's not. I rebuke this in the name of Jesus. It's not your plan. But it was his plan. So, I mean, I guess 2 weeks later, I got an acceptance letter in the mail that I had been accepted to Northwest Shoals. So I started at 40 years old in college, and graduated UNA in 2014 with my Bachelor of Interdisciplinary Studies. And I am, as of today, just wrapped up my 3rd semester in my master's program for professional studies.
So awesome.
And I had called Community Action during a summer break from college because I was bored. I didn't have anything to do. And so I called. I said, hey, can I come up there and volunteer, do something? Because I wanted to give back. They had just, they had opened so many doors in my life. And they said, well, we need a receptionist 2 days a week, 8 hours a day, and we can't pay you a dime. And I was like, Lord, not again. So of course I said, yes, I will be glad to do that. And when it came time for me to go back to school that fall semester, they said, we don't want to lose you. And so they hired me. And then just one thing after another, so here I am. That was in 2013. And so I have been with the agency since then, and now I coordinate the Forward Fatherhood program. So
Will, have you got a question you want to ask?
Yeah, sorry, I had to bounce for
that's
take
good.
care
That's
of
good.
a 3-year-old for a second. One thing that's amazed me, and I've had the ability to work with Jackie through Ben's counseling stuff several times, and I think it was probably the 3rd or 4th time before I ever learned Jackie's story, which just amazed me about the mindset of who she is as a person, her character, and everything about her. So my question, Jackie, would be, how do you maintain the mindset that you have? Because I know on a daily basis, you're working with some people that are going through some pretty rough things and things that you've experienced that may even bring back some, I wouldn't say some stresses, but you've been where they've been. And I know there's sometimes a lot of negativity there. And I just want to know how you keep your mindset, because there's a lot of people, a lot of listeners that we have that are going through difficult things in life, and how can they take some advice from you and your mindset and just the positive person you are and kind of apply that to their life?
Well, for me, the clients that I serve, they are mirror images of me at their age. And I take myself back and I remember how defiant I was and how I stayed in denial for so many years. And I give them a really hard time because, for a lot of my clients, they didn't have parents like I had. And so they are missing that foundation. And so I guess, I just I love them through it. And I'm going to tell you for myself, I pray every day. I mean, like on my way to work, radio's off, I don't do anything except pray the whole way to work. And I just pray that for God to let me serve somebody today, let them hear something. So I try to open my heart to seeing what people need. And I'm going to tell you, I've had a couple of clients that have really tested my patience, and I have had, I've had some very heated conversations in my office before. And then again, I've had moments where my clients have broke down. And I think sometimes, by the time they come to me, they have already had DHR involved in their lives. 9 out of 10 times they are in the criminal justice system. They have already experienced a lot of adverse consequences as a result of their decisions by the time I get them. And so really I kind of have to meet them where they're at, but I don't think they ever have had someone to sit down, look them in the eye and say, what you're telling me is a bunch of and I'm not buying it.
Yeah.
And so now let's get real about it. When did you start using and what are you on? No, you're not. And then when they see that I don't judge them, it's not my place to judge them, but when they see that I also can, I empathize with them, and I do understand where they're coming from. And I talk to them like I would want to be talked to. If you're gonna quote me out of your curricula, whatever you're saying is going to go one ear and out the other. But when you say, I've been there, let me tell you what happened to me, and let me share with you what I did to move through that. When they see that when you tell someone, well, I've been arrested too, or I've been homeless too, I've been a drug addict too, I went to prison, I did this with my family or did this with my children. When they see that somebody who is in situations that they're in currently has been in it and has overcome, that gives them hope. And that's what, at the end of the day, that's really the main thing that I offer. It's not education, it's not parenting classes, it's not life skills. I am a vision of hope for them, because I tell them all the time, there's nothing you've done in your past, I promise you, that comes close to the things that I have done.
Well, I think that's as a guy. And when I went in for my diagnosis, they asked me, have you ever done any records? No. Any alcohol? No. And they're like, look at me like I'm a unicorn, as a guy that, I've not been tempted by those things. I have my own temptations, but to know when to be hard, when to be soft, that is such a difficult thing for me to know. And I've had people, when do you cut them off? Like when? And I'm like, I don't know. But for somebody like you to come along that can say, I know what it's like to have everything taken away from me by my own decision. And I know what it's like to be arrested by my own mistake. And that's just a different level that you can play, to play ball, I guess, with them. You've been on that field and you have experience. That's just an amazing thing. And it's great to see God can use that in that way. So.
Yeah. And watching you, we had a group today, and watching them with you, there's a respect that they have for you. And there's a love that they have. And like you were joking, I've become their mamas, and you have to a degree. And I think there's something to be said for boundaries. Somebody needing to have some boundary, but some people have never learned boundaries. They didn't have that part of that foundation was boundaries. And part of that foundation was love.
Exactly.
And one of the things that I've heard people say, and I've stolen it from somewhere, I'm sure, but, love people where they are, but love them enough not to leave them there.
That's right.
And then we find people in some pretty rough situations as a church. We find people in rough situations in community action and other places. And so you've got those two things. You've established and helped people establish boundaries. And you've also helped people find a way to love, even in differences. We don't all have to have the same life or the same background, but I can love you where you are, and I love you enough not to leave you there.
The clients I work with, the respect is both ways. I respect them as individuals, and I also I think when I share bits and pieces of my story, because I don't sit down with every client that I intake and give them a background on myself. But I think when I do share, have the opportunity to share bits and pieces of my past with them, there's a trust. There's a trust that gets built between us. And, a lot of my clients, and I say a lot, not every one of them, but I can honestly say, and this is a sad statistic, but probably 9 out of 10 of the clients that I serve, and up until this year, we typically on average, we were serving 200 to 280 individuals a year. Like I said, 9 out of 10 of those, they didn't have a good childhood. But here is where my tough love comes in as a instructor for them. I do not let them play victim. I do not let them cry victim. Yes, they probably had and experienced, some childhood crises. And I acknowledge those, because I think sometimes they just need to know, and this could be useful for you guys when you're dealing with others. Sometimes they just want to know, they want somebody to acknowledge, yes, you had a terrible childhood. Yes, it was crappy. And I know that hurt you, and I know that traumatized you. But we're going to work on that. But we are now, we're going to address that. We're going to say, yep, that happened, and we're going to move through it. But we got to push on, because guess what? Now you're a mom. Now you're a dad. So you have to take off that hurt child hat that you're wearing, and let's put on the now I'm a parent hat. Because if we
change the legacy,
we have to. Because if they continue to stay that injured child and they cannot get past that, then they are going to turn around and their children are going to become injured children. Yeah. So we try to address the hurt, because we don't want to minimize it, and we don't want to discount it. But what we do want to do is help them work through it, so that they can break that cycle, for their family. And that's hard to do. Yeah. But that is what we try to do, because we need to move on past that. My whole thing is, when you know better, you got to do better.
Ready to thrive in your ministry work? Pursuing a degree in biblical studies at the undergraduate or graduate level is now more convenient than ever. The deadline to apply for spring semester classes at Heritage Christian University is January 10th. To apply or see all the classes available, visit www.hcu.edu. Nearly all of these classes were created to be taken remotely, so no matter your schedule or location, you can be a part of learning more about the Bible in the new year. Apply today.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com, and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.